January 21st, 1990. Killed Tonya Bennett in Portland. 2 people got the blame, so I can kill again. G'day there everyone, welcome to Bedtime Crime, a channel dedicated to serial killers, murder stories, and much more. So don't forget to like and subscribe. If there are any stories you want to hear, or stories that you want to bring more attention to, then leave me a comment. Let's get started with today's story. Keith Hunter Jesperson. Born on April the 6th, 1955 in Chilrick, British Columbia, Canada. The middle of 5 children. Life started off very difficult for Jesperson. His family had a line of violence. His alcoholic father and grandfather were known to be abusive. His brothers weren't too kind as well, often teasing him and eventually giving him the name Igor or Ig, a name that stuck through his schooling years. Life at home was already difficult enough. However, school wasn't much better. It seems that Jesperson couldn't catch a break. Usually the bigger guy in the school is stereotyped as the bully. This wasn't the case for Jesperson, as kids would often tease him about his larger size. The constant verbal and physical abuse turned Jesperson into a shy boy growing up. Though as shy as he was, this didn't stop him from misbehaving. News from school about his behavior would find its way home. Jesperson would go home after school, where his father would be waiting, to punish him in the only way he knew how to. All this punishment and rage would start to grow stronger over time, but even as early as 5 years old, Jesperson would take a sickening interest in animals. It is reported around that time, Jesperson would find interest in torturing and killing animals, such as cats, dogs, and birds. Was this a byproduct from the abuse that he would receive from his father, teasings from his brothers and classmates? Was this Jesperson's way of trying to gain the upper hand on something weaker than he was? It sure seems that way. He has been reported saying at the time that he would kill animals, he would often wonder what it would be like to do the same to humans. Whenever he got the chance to feel power over something, he would take it. And eventually, killing and torturing animals would be a thing of the past. It was around the age of 10 when Jesperson first tried to take his first human life. Though being a shy boy, Jesperson was still able to make the odd friend here and there. One of his friends named Martin was also a troublemaker like Jesperson. The two of them would often get into trouble together, in many cases Martin being the instigator. Martin would also often shift the blame to Jesperson. This obviously didn't go down too well with Jesperson, until eventually he couldn't take it anymore. One day, Jesperson attacked Martin until his father got involved and pulled the 2 boys away. It was reported that Jesperson's intentions were to kill. This wasn't the only time that Jesperson tried to kill one of his friends. Around a year later after the first incident, Jesperson was with another boy he befriended. They were both at the lake. Reports say that the friend held Jesperson underwater. It's unclear whether it was just 2 boys playing around, or if the friend was trying to hurt Jesperson. A little while later, both boys were at a local pool. Jesperson saw this as a time for revenge. He decided to do the same thing back to the friend and hold him underwater. However, Jesperson's intentions were very clear. Luckily for the friend, a lifeguard was able to see the situation and pull Jesperson away in time. Jesperson's childhood was filled with drama, abuse, and violence. However, he was able to graduate high school in 1973. It would seem after high school, there was a small period of normalcy in Jesperson's life. At 20 years old, he met a woman by the name of Rose Huck. The two fell in love and got married. Jesperson and Huck went on to have 3 healthy children and raise them in Topanish, Washington. Jesperson would take on the traditional role of providing for the family by getting a job as a long-haul truck driver. It's reported that Jesperson even had dreams of becoming a Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer. He also had an interest in crime. But was this interest in a way to solve a crime? Or how to commit one? Things started to go south for the family when Jesperson's wife started receiving calls from women claiming to be Jesperson's girlfriends. This became too much for Huck, and after 14 years of marriage, they got a divorce. Though being divorced, this didn't stop Jesperson fulfilling his fatherly duties. Whenever he was in the Spokane, Washington area, which is where his ex-wife and children now resided, Jesperson would call in and take his children out on dates. From the outside looking in, he seemed like just a normal father. His daughter Melissa Moore, who would go on later to speak very openly about her father, would recount times of happiness with him and her siblings. Given his own childhood past full of violence and horror, he was said to be the exact opposite of his father. He would never hit his children, and on the occasions where he and his wife at the time would get into a heated argument, he opted not to get physical and would just walk away. He seemed to have strong family values for his own family, though his childhood was much different. Eventually, glimpses of the evil man within would appear in front of his own family. Melissa Moore recounts one of the most traumatic times of her childhood. One day, she found some kittens under the house that she was living in. She was very excited and ran to her dad to let him know. Jesperson, her father, asked them where they were. However, she refused to show him. But eventually, Jesperson would find them. In a sickening act, Jesperson hung the kittens by their tails on a clothesline. Upset, Melissa ran to her mother to stop her father from hurting the kittens. When she came back, it was too late. The kittens were on the ground, dead. Melissa is reported saying that her father seemed to have enjoyed this situation. He seemed to have liked the power that he had over his family. Though at times he was nice to his family, deep down his thirst for control was always there. There would be other times where alarm bells started ringing for Melissa and her siblings. One time he is reported saying to his children, "I know how to kill someone and get away with it." Even with those words, his children didn't suspect too much, and especially what was going on at the time. Some say being a truck driver is great. It's like traveling the country and getting paid to do it. For Jesperson, this was his opportunity to fulfill those fantasies he's had since he was a little boy. Jesperson's first murder came on the night of the 23rd of January 1990. Jesperson met a woman by the name of Tanya Bennett at a bar near Portland, Oregon. Bennett was 23 years old at the time of meeting Jesperson. She was known to be a very friendly person. However, she was also known to be developmentally slower than most. After a night of drinking and talking, Jesperson thought this would be a great opportunity for him to take advantage of Bennett. Jesperson took Bennett back to his suburban home, where he started making sexual advancements on her. Bennett was said to be uncomfortable and resisting from Jesperson's advancements, and soon an argument between the two broke out. This left Jesperson angry and lashed out at Bennett, hitting her in the face multiple times. This anger may have been the trigger to set off his life of killing. In an obvious selfish act, Jesperson thought to himself that he did not want to go to jail for beating up Bennett. So, the only way to stop Bennett from going to the police is kill her. You will notice through the story the poor excuses that Jesperson made for killing his victims. After beating Bennett, he then tied a rope around her neck and strangled her to death. After killing Bennett, Jesperson tried to come up with an alibi. So, he went back to the bar for a few more drinks to think. He later went back to their house to pick up the body, and later dumped the body of Bennett at a place that he was quite familiar with. Multnomah Falls was a place where Jesperson would take his family for a day out from time to time. This is the place where he dumped Bennett's body. It is a wonder before Bennett's murder whether Jesperson would think about dumping a body there. It is common for killers to revisit the site of which the killers killed their victims, and also where they dumped their bodies. I guess for Jesperson, this might have been a good excuse to continue going to the falls. A recurring personality trait for many serial killers is a level of narcissism. This was also the same for Jesperson. He would brag to his family about what he is capable of, but when someone else took the blame for Bennett's murder, well, this was too much for Jesperson. News reports eventually got out about Bennett's murder. However, with Jesperson not seen as the murderer at this point, a woman by the name of Laverne Pavlinak took this opportunity to try and frame her boyfriend, John Sosnovsky. Why would someone want to do that? Well, Pavlinak saw this as an opportunity to escape from her abusive relationship. Pavlinak was so desperate to frame her boyfriend, she gathered as much information about the murder from TV and the newspapers. She even included herself in the fake story by saying she helped with the rape, murder, and the disposal of Bennett. Even going as far as to purchase a purse to put in the back of Sosnovsky's car, and then saying it was Bennett's. John Sosnovsky, along with Laverne Pavlinak, were arrested on the 5th of March 1990 and convicted of murder on the 8th of February 1991. Though Sosnovsky didn't murder Bennett, he had no choice and went to plead guilty to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to life in prison, and Pavlinak was sentenced to 10 years. This penalty was far more serious than what Pavlinak thought. Realizing her mistake, she admitted to the police that she was making up a story. The police at the time didn't believe her. It took a whole 5 years on the 7th of January 1996 before Pavlinak and Sosnovsky were released. The media attention that Pavlinak and Sosnovsky were getting eventually made its way to Jesperson. Jesperson, caught off guard and a little envious of the attention, decided to make a confession of his own. However, his confession was not to police or the media outlet. Jesperson's way of confessing was on a bus terminal toilet wall in Montana. It's unsure why he decided this was the way he first wanted to confess. I mean, I've seen tons of scribblings on walls of toilets, none of which I took seriously. On the toilet wall, Jesperson wrote, January 21st, 1990. Killed Tanya Bennett in Portland. 2 people got the blame so I can kill again. The confession on the wall states the 21st. However, many reports say the murder occurred on the 23rd. This could have just been a mistake on Jesperson's part. At the end of the writing, he signed it with a happy face. However, Jesperson wouldn't be called the happy face killer until 1994, when he wrote a letter into the Oregonian, a daily newspaper based in Portland, Oregon. More on that a little later. It seemed now Jesperson made it his plan to murder people. It's unsure, but he may not have thought he was going to kill his first victim that night at the bar. But now, it seems that he was seeking to kill. However, his next attempt was not going to be the way he planned it. On the night of April 12, 1990, Jesperson was hanging around a car park near Mount Shasta in Siskiyou County, California. He saw a woman and her baby also hanging around the car park. He approached the woman to strike up a conversation. This woman's name is Dawn Richard Slagle. Richard Slagle was a little hesitant at first to talk to Jesperson. However, being the kind woman that she is, decided to engage in conversation. She explained that she and her husband just had a fight, and she came out to get away from him for a little while. Jesperson saw this opportunity to try and sympathize with her, mentioning the fact that he too has had some relationship trouble, being recently divorced and missing his children. Though a little uneasy at the start, they seemed to have gotten friendly enough to where Richard Slagle was brave enough to ask Jesperson if he would take her and her baby in his car to find a place to go to the toilet. Jesperson agrees, and they both drive off to find a place. They both drove a little out of town to a stop where Richard Slagle was able to go to the toilet. After Richard Slagle came back from the toilet, Jesperson disappeared. That uneasy feeling started to come back in Richard Slagle. Jesperson didn't come back for some time, and it is unsure what he was doing while he was away. When Jesperson came back, they both got into the car, but instead of going back onto the main road, Jesperson started driving deeper into the bushes. It's at this point where Richard Slagle knows something terrible is going to happen. Suddenly, Jesperson slams Richard Slagle's face into the window and attempts to break her neck. Because of the struggling, Richard Slagle's baby falls onto the floor, falling under Jesperson's brake pedal. Jesperson showed an even sicker side of him that night, as he tried to crush the baby's head underneath the brake pedal. A back and forth struggle continued between Richard Slagle and Jesperson. Eventually, Richard Slagle was able to pull free and grab her baby. Obviously scared for her and her baby's life, she knew she wasn't able to physically beat Jesperson, but instead tried to buy some more time with words. Richard Slagle agrees to go with Jesperson wherever he wanted to go. Jesperson calms down and decides to start driving again. In a strange moment, Jesperson turns to Richard Slagle and says, "Don't ever get into a car with someone you don't know again. It might be the last thing you ever do." He let Richard Slagle out of the car and took off. Richard Slagle, terrified for her life, went straight to the police. The police were able to apprehend Jesperson the same night. Jesperson went on to admit to the assault and attempted murder. Richard Slagle was asked if she wanted to press charges. However, her husband at the time told her to forget about it. The police, annoyed by Richard Slagle's husband at the time, gave her some time to think about it and asked her to call them back as soon as possible. But by the time she called back to press charges, the police had let Jesperson go. After that incident, Jesperson went on to commit several more murders. Jesperson's last victim, Julie Winningham, in 1995, was Jesperson's ex-girlfriend. But before Winningham, he already killed 7 people. But just before he killed Winningham, he wanted to try and get recognition for his crimes. He wrote a 6-page letter to the Oregonian, the newspaper I briefly mentioned earlier in the story. In the letter, he wrote names of the victims he killed, the locations of the bodies, and also graphic explanations on how he carried out his murders. At the end of the letter, a happy face was drawn. It was from this point where the happy face killer got his name. Winningham, the last victim, was what led to his capture. It was knowledge to people around him that he was dating Winningham at the time, even introducing her to his family. But a signature on a receipt by Jesperson found on Winningham led detectives to find him. Though he denied killing her at first, it wasn't until a day after the interrogation Jesperson faced is when he decided to give up. He left a voicemail on the detective's machine saying, "You're right, I want to turn myself in." Jesperson later on also wrote a letter to his brother just before turning himself in. In the letter he confessed that he did in fact kill Winningham, and not only her, but 7 more women. A victim only known as Claudia in 1992, her full identity is still unknown. Cynthia Lynn Rose Wilcox in 1992, which was supposed to be over a parking lot dispute. However, Jesperson later said he had actually killed another woman and did not recognize Wilcox's photo. He killed Laurie Ann Pentland in 1992, a sex worker who, according to Jesperson, would complain a lot about her life, and so Jesperson offered to kill her, to which, according to Jesperson, she said, "Go for it." Cindy in 1993 and Susanna in 1994, also victims who have no full identity at this point. Angela Sobrise in 1995, where Jesperson killed her, then tied her underneath his truck. His reasoning for tying her under the truck was that he would destroy all the evidence. Jesperson killed all his victims in the way of strangulation. The brother, knowing the right thing to do, then handed the letter in to the police, and Jesperson was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences, with a total of 120 years. He went on to confess hundreds more, but only 8 have been confirmed. And that was the story of the happy-faced killer. What I found the most interesting about this case was the phone interviews with the crime show 2020. Jesperson wanted the attention for killing. He wanted to be known for all the terrible things that he has done, though at one point during the interview, it almost seemed like he was sick and tired of talking about his crimes.
I'm sorry it happened, wish it never happened, and can we move on?
Can we move on?
Yeah, come on, it's done, it's over with. Yes, I'd like to go back in time and change it and make it all go away and make it all peaches and cream again, but I can't do that. At the time, I could justify each and every one of those murders, and at this time, I cannot.
The program was denied face-to-face interviews because it said that Jesperson loves the media attention. So why was he so irritated when talking about things he was supposed to be proud of? Though he says he's regretful, it sure didn't sound like it. Thanks for watching or listening to Bedtime Crime. If there are any stories that you would like me to cover, even if it's cases you think that need more attention like the one I did about Jade Kendall, please comment below. See you next time.